Let's see. What I'm going to talk about today is a common problem in new product forecasting, and that is how to incorporate subjective characteristics that aren't easily measured, okay, into evaluations of new products. And my co-authors are listed here, and I'll give you a little bit of background on the research. Okay, this is a paper that we based on a paper that we published in Journal of Marketing Research a couple of years ago. It was part of Lan Luo, who was a very smart student, his dissertation, and it was funded by a grant from NSF, but the cooperating company was Black & Decker. So we were working with Black & Decker on developing this project. Okay, and the basic objective of the whole project, and this is just one of the studies of 3 or 4 in the project, was to incorporate marketing considerations into engineering design. Okay, let me provide a little bit of motivation for this. These are, I'm not exactly sure what they do, but they're grinders. Okay, and construction workers use them, and I guess they go like that or something like that. All right. They do have some objective attributes, okay? So there's all sorts of different kinds of switches. And that's pretty easy to describe, right? A side switch, a paddle, and so on. Okay, except that if you're collecting data from the construction worker, they might not know what it is, okay? They might, and also we know the price, etc. But they have all different shapes, and they have different weights, and different powered motors. All right, so the standard way of getting data or a standard way of getting data for new products is called Conjoint, where usually you give people verbal descriptions, right, of the product, and they're asked to rate them or rank them or something like that. It's very difficult or impossible, really, to give a verbal description of things like this. The things that are probably important to choice can't be described verbally. Right? Somebody would have to experience them, and so that's the basic of the problem. So how do we get at these kind of subjective attributes okay, that are very important to the choice, but we can't really describe them verbally. Okay, and that was the subject of the project. Okay, so power tool users evaluate various power tools on some objective attributes, certainly price, the type of the switch, and so on, but also whether it seems to be powerful enough or not. Whether it's comfortable to use, and so on. Okay, these are important things. Well, how do we incorporate that into a study? So those are the objective attributes and the subjective attributes. Okay, and similarly, take any purchase, auto purchase, for example. Looks nice, comfortable to drive. Okay, these things are important to the purchase. Okay, and they're not easy to describe. Okay, as I said earlier, Conjoint is the kind of the standard way of doing this. The problem with the Conjoint is that they're verbal descriptions typically, or maybe pictures, but these very subjective characteristics are very difficult to determine. Let's see, Conjoint data, okay, usually just by way of background, is collected by survey. And the design usually is that each respondent evaluates a set of profiles, okay, that present descriptions of attributes at different levels, okay, and the people react to that, and you use that to develop a forecast, okay, and then use attribute preferences. Well, that won't work in this case, we think, okay, so we have to find something different. Okay, I'm going to skip these. Okay, so our proposed model. What we're going to do is use customer-ready prototypes. Okay, we're going to see if that helps us in forecasting. And Black & Decker was happy or nice enough to spend the money to develop prototypes of 10 different grinders that have different design characteristics that we could use in the study. And And what we're going to do to get information on the subjective product characteristics is collect the user's ratings. Okay, so the user is going to rate the prototypes on these different subjective product characteristics. And then we're going to incorporate both of these, okay, into a model that'll forecast. So basically, the way we see the world is that there are objective attributes, the price, the switch type, and so on. And then there are these subjective characteristics, how comfortable it is. Okay, and what we have to do is try to use some scales or some way of measuring the subjective characteristics, and then we're going to combine both of them into our analysis. Now, the objective attributes, as we'll see, probably influence people's perceptions of the subjective characteristics. For example, we're going to see that the prices, very objective characteristic, influence people's perceptions of how powerful these things were. Okay, so basically that's our, whoops, okay, get the arrows. Okay. Now, the forecasting problem, we know what the objective attributes are, and we've developed a model that will predict preference for both types. What we have to do is forecast the values of the subjective characteristics for other people not in the study. Okay, and we developed a method for doing that. Okay, and the output is purchase intention. So again, our modeling approach is to present a sample with prototypes. Okay, with both types of attributes. And our data analysis is going to involve the following things. We're going to have scale measures for the subjective attributes. Okay, we also know what the objective attributes are, and we'll get a purchase intent measure as well. Okay, and all of these are allowed to vary across consumers. Let's see, we had a very complicated model to estimate that, and that's all I'm going to say. Let's see, it's a hierarchical Bayesian structural equations model, and that's as much as I'll say about that. Okay, so we need to get measures of these various things. Now, as a comparison, what we did, we think, or hypothesis is that adding the subjective characteristics will provide insights and help us in forecasting. As a comparison, we use a conjoint model based on the prototypes as well, where we look at only the relation between purchase intention and the objective attributes. Okay, and we're going to present that. Okay, so the data, the users of these things are construction workers. So we had to go out to find construction workers, and we recruited 51 participants from various job sites around Washington, D.C. They're presented with 10 painted gray prototypes, so we kind of hold the influence of color constant, 9 for calibration, 1 for a holdout sample. In the first stage, we collect purchase intention data. In the second stage, we get them to rate the subjective attributes. Now, we get the purchase intention data first to keep the ratings from biasing, okay, what they're finally going to present. And we have 7-point scales. The 2 subjective attributes that seem to be important based on some prior research were perceived power and perceived comfort, okay, kind of how it feels in your hand, and so on. So these are the scales that we used. I expect this tool to be powerful, for example, and we had some measures of comfort, okay, that were developed, again, based on pre-tests. And here's the results. Okay, there's, let's see, let me back up. Okay, there's 2 things I'd like to point out. We have a relation between perceived power, perceived comfort, and purchase intentions, and objective attributes, the shape, the switch type, the weight, and the price. Okay? Now, perceived comfort has a very strong influence on purchase intent, as you might expect. Okay? Now, that's something that just can't be quantified. Okay? It's related, however, in some ways to some of these product attributes. Let's see, where is... Yeah, here, okay. Now, one of the things that we found, as I said earlier, is that there's a positive relation between perceived power and price. So if it was expensive, okay, the people kind of think it's powerful, okay? And, okay, if you look only at the conjoint results, you see people preferring the more expensive thing. Well, that doesn't make any sense, right? However, if you hold perceived comfort constant, okay, you see that we get the kind of the right price effects. Okay, so this funny positive result is really due to omitting comfort from the consideration of, or power from the consideration of the model. Okay. Now another result we get is that this trigger switch has a very big influence on perceived comfort, and again, perceived comfort is having a big influence on purchase intent. Okay, and for the conjoint, we see that the side slider actually has a bigger influence than the trigger switch. So basically what this result did is using the subjective attributes actually change the recommendation for what is the best product. Okay, so the best product would be one with a trigger switch, lightweight, okay, particular shape, and so on, and price of $129. Also, these results show that the adding the subjective attributes in greatly increase the predictive power of the model. Let's see. So I need that. Okay, we did another study of toothbrushes that I think I'm running out of time. I'm not going to go into. Okay, basically what we did is presented people, students. Okay, we ran out of money, right? So you use some students if you run out of money, and the reviewers would make us validate. Reviewers would never accept that you only did one study, so we had to cook up something cheap that we get another study. So we had people students choosing different designs of toothbrushes. Okay, and we did exactly the same. We found kind of the same results. One of the things we added to the student study was that we said, all right, suppose we show computer descriptions of these things, okay, where they can visualize the description online. Would that work just as well as the prototypes, which were the actual toothbrushes? We went out and bought a pile of toothbrushes. Okay, and the answer is no. Okay, the prototypes actually gave much better predictive results, even in just the conjoint study. Okay, so let's see. Let me work through this again. Okay, so anyway, current research emphasizes objective attributes. That's fine for some products. Things that have where ergonomics are very important. Okay, the comfort, how it feels in your hands, something like that. Okay, they just can't be described. Okay, so it looks like if you can afford to develop prototypes, that is really the way to go, and actually you get much better data. Okay, if you do that. So I think that's probably the major takeaway. And also our empirical model provides a way of incorporating both the objective and subjective things, and we did some fancy kind of metrics on that. And that's probably what got the paper published, actually. But anyway, this is the takeaway, I think, that you have to get subjective reactions for certain types of products.